I would like to request Senator to come on the stage and introduce the guest speakers.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
As I was saying, as I look around, I reflect back on when the community
It's great to be here with all of you today. This has been quite a remarkable journey in publishing Ben's book, in really understanding the issues around how China has oppressed, suppressed, ultimately taken away freedoms, your freedoms, taken away your homeland, and for what reason? For power and for money. And in hopes that they can steal your land, steal the water, and use it for their own means. Your quest, your struggle, is our struggle. As I've published on topics around the Chinese Communist Party, their infiltration operations, espionage operations around the world, I have built a network of human rights activists, of concerned citizens, and we all have one thing in common: humanity. And this gentleman here, Senator Conditino, is being, for me, a great mentor and a great friend. He's been a great friend with the Tibetan people and all other oppressed peoples of the Chinese Communist regime. This man, we all owe a debt of gratitude for what he's done in Parliament and to speak loudly and clearly against repression. And it's with his inspiration, in part, why I'm here today. Ben and I met a number of years ago, and online originally. We started. I feel as if I'm in Dharma Sabha. I feel like I'm with the Tibetan community again. And your struggle is his last book. Very quickly, when Ben and I started discussing the book, we felt it was very important that we chronicle, that he chronicles all of the tragedies against all of the different peoples in China and around the world that the Chinese Communist Party suppresses, oppresses, murders, interns. This is an evil regime. Ben has documented it so well in his book. Without further ado, Benedict Rogers.
It's really a wonderful privilege and pleasure to be with you today. As Dean said earlier, being among you in this amazing temple and this amazing Tibetan Community Centre, I feel like I'm back in Dharamsala and perhaps even in the place that I've never been and cannot go to. None of us can go to now, Tibet itself. Because I believe that although the Chinese Communist Party regime is so severely repressing Tibet and trying to destroy Tibetan culture, Tibetan identity, Tibetan Buddhist religion, it can never destroy Tibet itself, because Tibet lives on in the hearts of every Tibetan and every friend of Tibet. So for that reason, I'm so glad to be with you. I want to thank and pay tribute to, firstly, Dean Baxendale, both for his courage in publishing my book, The China Nexus, and for his comradeship in this cause, and for all the experiences we've shared together in the last 6 months. We launched the book. I'm from London. I'm based in London. I flew in last night to Toronto. But we launched the book 6 months ago in London. We had a launch in Brussels. Then last November, December, we're here in Toronto, in Ottawa, in Montreal, in Washington DC, in New York, and then we travelled together to New Delhi and Dharamsala. And I'm so glad to be back now here in Canada. I also want to pay tribute to Senator Condonino, who features in the book. I had the privilege of interviewing Senator Donino for the book and quoting parts of his story and his tremendous leadership and support for Tibet. Not only Tibet, for Falun Gong, for the Uyghurs, for all the victims of the Chinese Communist Party regime. But in addition to his story being quoted in the book, there's a wonderful photograph of Senator Donino with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And when Dean and I had the privilege of meeting, having an audience with His Holiness just over a month ago, a month and a half ago, we had the wonderful opportunity of presenting the book to him. When I presented the book to His Holiness, immediately his eyes settled on the Tibetan flag on the cover of the book, and he pointed at it. And then there was a wonderful moment, I hope Dean doesn't mind me sharing this, when Dean then had an opportunity to speak with His Holiness. And we were instructed to wear face masks. So we were following instructions from His Holiness's office. And when, for some reason, His Holiness had no problem hearing what I was saying through my face mask, but he was clearly struggling to hear what Dean was saying through his face mask. And Dean was conveying warm greetings from Senator Donino. And His Holiness clearly wanted to hear what Dean was saying. So he reached out and pulled off the face mask from Dean and looked at him as if to say, just speak to me. And that was a wonderful moment. Both of us had these few seconds of deep intimacy as well as profound respect with His Holiness. And I should say that I also had the privilege of interviewing in writing His Holiness for the book. So His Holiness's words communicated directly to me, and with his permission to quote him in the book are mentioned in the book. We also had wonderful other meetings in Dharamsala. We had more than an hour with the Sikyong and learned from the Sikyong his perspectives on the current situation in Tibet and on what the international community should do. And we pledged to the Sikyong and to every Tibetan that we met that we would redouble our efforts to make sure that Tibet is not forgotten. It's quite right that the world is more and more focused, not enough, but more and more, on the genocide of the Uyghurs in what the regime calls Xinjiang, or what the Uyghurs prefer to call East Turkestan. It's quite right that there is more attention on the dismantling of freedom in Hong Kong, and I've played a particular small part in that in founding and leading an organisation called Hong Kong Watch. But I am concerned that as we pay more attention to the Uyghurs, to Hong Kong, to repression in China itself, and to the threats to Taiwan, that we must not ever forget Tibet. Because what you, the people of Tibet, there is a red line. The goal, as dissident Xu Zhiyong puts it in his powerful book, to build a free China, A Citizen's Journey, is, quote, a free China with democracy and rule of law, a just and prosperous civil society, and a new national spirit of freedom, justice, and love. If we can help the peoples of China and Hong Kong, Tibet, and East Turkestan achieve that, the world will be a better, more peaceful, and safer place. And that, I think, is the spirit of the Tibetan people. And all of us will stand with Tibet, and we will go on standing with you until the day when Dean and I, Senator Condonino, and our friends from the Solomon Islands and Tata can go not just to Dharamsala, but to Lhasa and Tibet itself. Thank you all very much.
Welcome to Toronto, Dean, Senator, and fellows. Special event. Welcome to Toronto. Under the United Nations, Article 18, religious freedom. Article 19, freedom of expression. Article 20, freedom of peaceful assembly. So under Article 18, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religious beliefs. So religious persecution on Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, and Falun Gong effort. Why United Nations cannot do anything about it? What is the reason behind it? How can we make it happen? Thank you.
Very quickly, I'll start to answer that question. There's an article that I published about 3 years ago specifically on all of the treaties that China has signed on to at the United Nations, vowing their support for religious freedom, for freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. The Chinese Communist Party has never, ever actually followed through on any of their commitments to the peoples around the world. That is the Chinese regime. And I'll let Ben talk a little bit further on that.
Thank you very much. It's a great question. I think the first thing to say is that, building on what Dean's just said, the Chinese Communist Party regime can never be trusted to keep its word. We've seen in the case of Hong Kong, for example, that it has totally broken a treaty that it made with the United Kingdom, in which it made many promises to uphold Hong Kong's freedoms and autonomy, and it's totally destroyed that. In its own constitution, not just in the United Nations treaties, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that you've mentioned, but in China's own constitution, religious freedom, for example, is promised, but it's totally denied in practice. To answer your question directly, I think the reason the UN has not been able to do more is that China has very successfully infiltrated the UN. I say infiltrated, of course it's a member state, so it has legitimacy in the sense of being able to be at the UN, but it's infiltrated in terms of really gaining key positions, and it's done so by pouring in huge amounts of money. And for example, I've been asking for some years why the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has said nothing about the genocide of the Uyghurs. He said nothing about the dismantling of freedoms in Hong Kong. He certainly said nothing about Tibet. But you don't have to look very far. Dean's phrase is follow the money, and it's exactly right. China has poured in millions of dollars, 20 million a year to be precise, into the office of the Secretary General at the United Nations, into a fund that is only controlled by the Secretary General and the Chinese government together, with no transparency, no accountability. A former US ambassador to the UN Economic and Social Council, Ambassador Kelly Curry, agreed to be interviewed for my book, and I quote her with her permission extensively on this very matter, and she describes it as a Chinese slush fund that has bought influence within the UN. The other factor, of course, is that China's economic investment and the Belt and Road Initiative and places like the Solomon Islands and so many other places have been effectively bought by China and therefore are silent at the UN. So when there are resolutions, there are many countries that you would have thought would vote for resolutions on human rights, but they don't because they're worried about the repercussions and the consequences for them, for China, if they do so. Having said that, it was interesting last year there was a resolution on the Uyghurs, which was only defeated by a couple of votes. So that gives us a little bit of cause for hope in that more countries were willing to step up than perhaps would have been the case a few years ago. And I think things are starting slowly to change, and we need more people like our friends from the Solomon Islands in countries to speak up and wake up and change that dominance of China at the UN. But that's the reason currently that the UN is so weak and so unable to do what it should.
One of powerful countries in the world. So these COVID agents run by Ministry of Security and State and United Front Department. So at last, the international community has realized China was not keeping its word as he said. They were lies. China lies all the time. So my question to you is, as a Tibetan, what are our challenges and what should we do not influenced by these COVID agents or influences? We have seen that recently in Canada. One of them is the Chinese embassy to be sent back. You know that the COVID operations, influence operations are all over in high places. So we as Tibetan, what should we do to challenge their influence operations or COVID influences? Thank you very much.
Let me just start on that. One of the other, a number of other books that Optimum has published, first of all, is Willful Blindness by Sam Cooper. He's the journalist and was really put a focus on the influence, espionage operations, transnational organized crime, and working with the MSS and the United Front Works Department. I have published also Hidden Hand by Clive Hamilton, Direct Wilbur, and bringing out a very, very important book that will expose the United Front here across the country, called The Mosaic Effect. I have already brought out a significant piece in Washington, D.C. on the influence operations that a U.S.-led operation to follow Canadian politicians, Canadian business people who have worked hand in glove with the Chinese Communist Party for over 40 years, and with criminal elements. Those criminal elements, which is the Chinese Communist Party, is an organization that needs to be stood up to, and to be spoken about, and to be brought into the light. You here today are speaking by being here and listening, but it must be up to you to demand of your MPs, of your MNAs, of your local politicians to stand for your voice. You should have no fear. There are people like me and others that want your voices heard. And it is only through our advocacy, our political work, our grassroots, that we can push back against this evil regime. But it's all up to you. I'm here to help get those messages out, but it's all up to us to work together. In the Solomon Islands, with the Uyghur community, with the Falun Gong, with the Hong Kongers. We are united for humanity against this tyrannical regime, and your voices are being heard. We need to tell David Johnson that the diaspora community, the Tibetan community, will not be silenced. Will not be silenced by the Chinese Communist regime. So those are my quick words.
I would just, I 100% agree with Dean, and I capture this thought in a simple phrase. We need to build a united front to counter the CCP's so-called united front. So we all need to unite, and this is happening more and more. A few years ago, you would not often see Tibetans, Hong Kongers, Uyghurs, Falun Gong practitioners, Taiwanese, Chinese dissidents coming together. But in the last few years, we're seeing it happen more and more, certainly in the UK, I believe here in Canada and elsewhere. So coming together and standing, because if we stand together, we're a much bigger and stronger voice and community than if we try to do it alone. And I would encourage you to speak up where you can. Those of you that can speak up publicly, I would encourage you to do so. I understand that for some of you and for some of the other diaspora communities, you may have family back home, you may have other concerns that make it difficult to speak up publicly. But if that's the case, you can still speak privately to your elected representatives, to the police, to the local authorities. If you see examples of covert operations of intimidation and infiltration, reporting that information to the right people is really important. So all of us can do something, whether it's public or private. and we should never allow, and it's easy for me to say this, I live in a free country, and I can't go to China and Hong Kong anyway, so in a sense I have nothing to lose. For those of you who have relatives and family back home, it's harder, but all of us can do something, and I would encourage you not to give in to the CCP's attempt to make you afraid, because that's what they want. They want us all to be fearful, and we mustn't allow them to do so.
And then finally, I would like to thank Senator and his friends who have come here and shared their inspirational stories and there's work that they have done over the last many years, and the stories that they have included in the book about not only the struggles that the Tibetans have gone through, but the people all over the world that have struggled under the Chinese regime. On behalf of all the people here, I would like to sincerely thank everyone for your work that you have been doing, and we hope that we will continue to keep in touch and share our thoughts and make sure that we are all working towards the same goal. Thank you so much.
Take your book. Any books? Take the book.
Sonam Toronto, that's my channel name.
Okay, Sonam
And Toronto.
Toronto, like this, like where we are. Okay, right.
And then I like to have I want to write in the description that it's setup that going to sell anything. I need that my channel. So can you write it?
Yes. In terms of like
online, if people want to buy it.
Okay. So probably one place is Amazon.
Okay, Amazon. Okay,
that's probably the common best. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
No problem. That's my Terry
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.